This is my PlayStation 5 Pro Max. I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but you can blame Apple for that. Someone at PlayStation Marketing's clearly taking tips from Apple. So I thought I'd finish the job by adding the missing Max. If you thought the $700 price tag on the Pro was a lot, well, getting to this Max level takes $1,700. $700 for the console, $80 for the disk drive, $30 for the stand, and about $900 for that 8TB M2 SSD. I'm in Canada, so if you include taxes and our lower dollar, that's a final bill of almost $2,500 Canadian, enough for a highly spec gaming PC. This video would have been an even bigger flex if I had that 30th anniversary Pro. I never managed to get one at retail, and there's no way I'm gonna pay thousands of dollars on eBay to a scalper. So for this, this thing's gonna have to do. Now, the main point of me spending all this money making this video is really to see if that massive 10 terabytes is overkill. And I can tell you right off the bat, of course it is. But how many games can you actually install with that much space? It's actually a lot. You can install hundreds of games with that. Going back to my PS5 Slim, with that 1 terabyte drive, you're gonna install about 12 games. On the PS5 Pro, with double the space, 2 terabytes, I installed 31 games on the main drive. I did leave about 30 gigabytes of free space. You really need that for all the save files and game updates. Maybe it's even wise to leave 50 gigabytes with the number of games we're going to install on this 8 terabyte expansion drive. So every time you start one of those games, the console essentially reserves space for that save file, but it all depends on if you're actually going to play those hundreds of games. I installed that 8 terabyte SSD and began the process of filling up that massive drive, and PS5 games only, no PS4 games allowed here. If you want extra space for PS4 games, you can always connect the external SSD, just a normal cheap one. Over the last year or so, I've been getting review codes for pretty much every PS5 game, so my library is massive. I installed essentially every single game I own, both digital and physical, or at least installed the ones that were worth it. I also skipped older games and previous year sports games. There's no point of installing FC 24, 25, 23 all on the same console. Same thing goes for Call of Duty. I only installed the latest one, Black Ops 6. With that, I managed to install a total of 130 games, 31 on the main drive and 99 on that 8 terabyte SSD. That's a lot of games. I'm sure my ISP hated me for downloading all these terabytes in just a few days. But even with that, I still couldn't fill out that 8 terabyte SSD. I still had about 3 terabytes of free space left. So I went to my local library. My local library. People kind of get surprised when I tell them this. This library carries pretty much every single game. They have Nintendo Switch games, PS5, Xbox, even older PS3 and Wii U games. They have them as well. I also subscribe to PS5 Plus Premium. As much as I hate that overpriced service, I had no choice here. I just needed more games to fill out that massive 8 terabyte drive. So here's the final numbers to max out those 10 terabytes. 193 games, 31 on the main console and then 162 on that expansion slot. That's a lot of games. I still had almost 60 gigabytes of free space on that 8 terabyte SSD. Sure, I could have put a couple more games and gotten to that 200 mark, but it's wise here to just leave some space for updates. Also, that 30 gigabytes of free space I had on the main drive, it's now down to 18 gigabytes. And I'm sure it's going to go down more because from the 193 games I had installed, I only had save files for about 121. That means 72 games out of those I have never, ever played at all. I'm not going to call out every single game I installed, but you can see the list on the screen and it's massive. I didn't spare any of those 100 gigabytes plus titles like Black Ops, God of War, Horizon. Practically every big game you can think of is on here. There's also a few shovelware here as well, games I'll never play or boot up. I don't think I missed any major games, but if I did and it's one of your favorites, maybe leave a comment below. I know some of the big games I left out are perhaps Silent Hill 2, Street Fighter 6, and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Reason for that, I sold off my physical copies that I bought, and there were just too many holds and people waiting waiting for copies at my library. Clearly, the 2TB Pro with an 8TB SSD is overkill. No one, not even someone like me who reviews games for a living, really needs that much space. For most gamers, 2TB Pro with a 2TB expansion SSD should be more than enough. Heck, go with a 4TB expansion if you have the extra money to throw around. But 8TB like I have on this thing, that's way too much, especially for $1,700. That's overkill.